Um, we welcome with a great pleasure Andrea PINOTTI from the who is a professor in aesthetics in the Department of Philosophy at the University Statale in Milano. His research on image theories and visual culture studies, virtual and augmented reality, philosophical theories of empathy, and the morphological tradition from Goethe to the present day. He has been fellow of various international institutions, including the Italian Academy at Columbia University, the Warburg Institute in London, and the Maison des Sciences de l'Homme, Fondation Maison des Sciences de l'Homme in Paris. Among his publications, I can recall some title of his books. The Body of Style, History of Art as History of Aesthetics, from Semper-Riegel Wölfflin, Memories of the Neutral, Morphology of the Image in Avi Warburg, Empathy, for a history of an idea of Plato to posthuman, On the Verge of the Image, from Narcissus to Virtual Reality, and Visual Culture, Images, Gazes, Media and Devices, in collaboration with Antonio Somaini, which has been translated in French recently as Culture Visuelle. In 2018, he has awarded the Wissenschaftspreis der Avi Warburg Stiftung in Hamburg. He's currently directing an important ERC advanced grant project entitled Iconology, History, Theory, and Practices of Environmental Images. I'm really glad to welcome Andrea to our symposium for a talk entitled Cyber-Theo Augmented Realities and Virtual Realities on Some Theological Roots of Augmented and Virtual Technologies. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Maria Giulia. Thank you, Massimo. Thank you, Claudio, with Ralph and Thierry for this invitation. I'm very glad to be here, and I would like to put on the table new technologies, because we are here around this issue of new technologies, but trying to show how these new technologies in production and transmission and consumption and reception of the image reactivate old desires, old and ancient promises rooted in a theological tradition. So I will go by keywords and key concepts, necessarily in a very synthetic way, but perhaps in the discussion we can, if you want, to think it's worthwhile, we can go back to some of them. Starting from the touch screen and the icons we are asked to interact with on our iPads, on our tablets, on our smartphones. Just think how quickly, even if we were not born touch natives, how quickly we become touch actors. In very few years, my mother, she is 86, she touches her screen all the time, and of course she calls me twice a day asking me what happened. Google has disappeared. It's just because the icon of Google was off screen because of her touching in a non-adequate, not proper way. This idea that we touch images and we touch in particular icons. Icons, as you know, comes from the Greek term eikon, which is one of the words through which the Greek culture designs our experience of these objects, which are images. But more strictly, icons are Byzantine religious sacred icons. And The way to interact still nowadays in the Orthodox Church with icons is not just contemplating them from an optical point of view, but interacting with them with the entire body, kissing them, so that they are exposed to frictions and a consumption of the material support of the image itself. As you all know, sacred icons were object of a very intense fight during the 8th century and afterwards, only partially, a conflict only partially solved in the acts of the Second Council of Nicaea, establishing that sacred images were allowed because they were not divine in themselves, but just objects to pay respect to, sort of trampolines, of springboards in order to make us think of the subjects which were represented, Jesus, Virgin Mary, and so on. So it's a very important moment, 787, in which a very crucial distinction was made between adoration and veneration. So latreia and proskynesis. Latreia is reserved to God and the divine persons. Proskynesis, veneration, is allowed for images which refer to, which are only representations. We all know that the politics and the policy of our museums and galleries is always, still nowadays, don't touch the images. Here we have, on the contrary, an invitation to touch. So the haptic experience is fundamental. But again, it's nothing totally new, something which has analogies with different religious experiences in the past, still practiced nowadays. And of course, that could be interpreted as a kind of secularized version of this haptic and tactile interaction. When we don these virtual reality helmets, we are here, but we feel that we are present there in another world, the synthetic world, and this sense of presence is related to ourselves. We feel present in a different environment, but also the digital objects that we encounter in this environment are felt as present to us, to the extent that we can interact with them. Perhaps through our virtual hands, like in this case, we can manipulate digital objects or interact with other subjects. So presence is also something which has very important theological root. As you know, in the Eucharist, different Christian confessions have been discussed. Because the discussion still goes on, and the differences are still there. Between some confessions which believe that thanks to the transubstantiation, the priest transforms in the ritual the bread and wine into real presence of the body of Christ in the bread and of his blood in the wine. Whereas other Christian traditions believe that this is just a symbolic representation. So I think that presence and representation, icon representation, just only symbolic representation, versus the real presence in the Eucharist, somehow survive in the polarization today of our experience of the image, and not by chance an entire line of research has developed in recent years around this very notion of presence. So presence studies, they have a journal, they have many publications, and they suggest that representation in terms of an image which is always, according to our mainstream tradition, image of something which is not an image. This of, this preposition drops, because in the presence I encounter entities in the virtual environment which are not felt as referential, iconic entities which refer to and represent something else, but which are there themselves in the presence. So again, real presence or just symbolic presence is something which is evoked, I think, in our virtual experiences. Second Life, as one of the many metaverses, not only the one described by and announced by Mark Zuckerberg, he was very smart in monopolizing a concept which, as you know, is plural. But when we want to enter one of these environments, we are often invited to assume a digital proxy, a digital delegate, which is the avatar. Avatars are very interesting because, which is very interesting for facets, because they can span from a very photorealistic, auto-representative image of my face, but also totally different masks, so to say, animal masks, or even of non-living objects that you can assume geometric figures, for example. Avatars are very interesting because you enter the digital world through this proxy, but the life that your proxy develops in the digital world can come back to the real world. No? So, for example, in therapies of biases, gender bias, if you are a misogyn and then you assume you're invited as a male to assume a female avatar, there are experiments showing that your gender bias can be reduced, or racial bias, if you can assume an avatar of a different skin color, for example. So it's this two-way relationship that, thanks to the avatar, can be instituted between the real world, so-called, and the digital one. But avatar is a very ancient term. It's a Sanskrit term describing the different visualizations and incarnations. Ralph just gave me a very interesting bouquin sur la vision incarnante et l'image incarnée. So when we say we embody ourselves in the avatar, into the avatar, embodiment is of course a more neutral term, secularized term, but I think that behind the notion of embodiment, ghosts of the religious incarnation are evoked. These are the avatars of Vishnu, meaning externalization, sensibilization, but there are some syncretistic traditions, for example, developed by a pupil of Mahatma Gandhi, trying to put together and combine Hinduism and Christianity, defining Jesus Christ himself as the avatar of God, because he is the visualization of the invisible God. So again, avatar, the avatara is the plural for this presentification of Vishnu in the physical world. Going back to virtual reality, we have this notion of immersivity, which has become, as you know, kind of diktat, kind of imperative. Everything nowadays must be immersive. We have didactic strategies, language learning, which must be immersive. Our experience must be immersive. We have a Van Gogh immersive experience, even if Van Gogh was not originally an immersive painter, or a Klimt immersive experience. This is, of course, something which must be addressed in a critical way, deconstructing some rhetoric and ideology of immersivity. But this is something I am indebted to Massimo. It is, of course, something which is again not totally new. Baptism, when, as Matthew describes, baptism of Jesus by the hand of John the Baptist, you went up out of the water. So you are totally immersed. You are buried, because for some this is a symbol of the burial and the renewal of, again, back to the air, which means back to a new life, and a life which is exactly marked by the threshold of going down and coming up. So immersivity as a notion should, of course, be referred to our contemporary experiences in virtual technologies, but it should perhaps also include a kind of genealogical horizon in religious baptism by total immersion of the body. This is, of course, something which has to do with VR. If you read, for example, Elimir Zolla, who is the famous historian of religions, in a 1992 book about, in Italian, it's Uscite dalla realtà, so it's exits from reality. There's one of the first chapters is devoted in 1992, very early, to virtual reality as a kind of transcendence, a kind of possibility to go beyond the threshold of actual and ordinary reality. So there is the possibility, which has already been explored, of reading virtual reality in terms of accessing a reality beyond, which has, of course, religious echoes and implications. And if VR is immersive, as you know, AR is immersive, meaning that you keep perceiving your environment, like in this case with the IKEA app. You take a picture of your living room, then you make digital objects like armchairs, for example, or sofas pop up in your actual environment. So you are not immersed. You do not go into another place, into another environment. You stay in your environment, and you evoke digital objects to come here. So in virtual reality, you go there. In augmented reality, you, in order not to have wrong sizes of sofas bought on online shop of IKEA, you call digital objects to come here, pop up in your ordinary. And again, Massimo suggested that, again, baptism could be evoked, not in terms of the baptism in the modality by immersion, but rather by a fusion or sprinkling or aspersion, which is a different kind of baptism. There's a strong theological debate. Some of the Christian confessions say that the Catholic promoted this kind of baptism in order to be able to baptize also young kids who are impossible to dive and to dip into deep water, in order to augment and enhance the number of baptized people. This is an analogy we should perhaps work on in order to develop it, but it's the idea that you present in the ordinary world, you do not change environment. You stay in your environment, but something special happens. The drops of sacred water, the digital entities popping up in your environment, again, augmented reality. What happens when you wear headset? You are in your room, comfortably sitting on one of those armchairs for video game players, but you are teleported into, as I said, another environment. Like in this case, you are in your room, but on the contrary, the audio-visual system of virtual reality shows you on a roller coaster. And you turn around and you experience the fact that you are running on a roller coaster across mountain landscape. You go up and you go down, but you are there and you're here. So the fact that you are here and you are there introduces a conflict, but also a simultaneous, not ubiquity, but in this case, bilocation. You are in two places at the same time. And bilocation is a property, a talent, a miraculous capacity of ancient philosophers. Pythagoras or Apollonius of Diana were said to be able to bilocate, or St. Francis, who is in Assisi, but he wants to visit Sant Antonio in Arles, and so on the right, St. Francis appears in front of Sant Antonio, and he helps him during prayer. So bilocation, which is an ancient dream, the possibility of being in two or more places at the same time, is something which has to do with telerobotics, for example, as well. So you are here in your lab, and through machines you operate with mechanical arms in another place, here and there at the same time. One of the most striking features of the virtual environments is the 360 vision. 360 vision, which allows you to emancipate yourself from the tyranny of the framing. If you read directors, for example, who have moved from traditional cinema to virtual reality, they say, I was tired of being slave of the tyranny of the framing, because if the guy decides that you shouldn't see one of the dancers of the famous paintings by the guy because they are cut off in the half of their body, you cannot go through the painting, move the frame, and say, let's see how the leg or the left half of the body is shaped. And the same in the same way, if Hitchcock decides that you shouldn't be the killer but only the victim, that's decided forever. You can go to the screen and move the screen in order to frame the face of the killer. With the 360, you have the impression that you can decide yourself to frame, just like in ordinary perception, because I can look at you, so now I can decide that for the rest of my paper, I look at Massimo, and you disappear, no? Because I impose to myself my own framing. But the idea is also the promise, of course, it's a rhetorical promise, an ideological promise, that you can see everything. And I think that the idea of God's eye, which is not dependent on the position of the viewer, because if I am here as a human being, I cannot see at the same time you and the back of this room. I can see the back of this room, but I must renounce, I must give up seeing you. God sees everything. He has no obstacles. He is not dependent on the position of a body because he has no body. This affects also the idea of panoramic photography. In every smartphone now you have this, how should I call it, desire? Because a picture is not enough, because the picture frames. So you want to catch all the environment. And through panoramic photography, which is implemented in any smartphone, you have this pressure towards the totality of the picture. A picture must not be partial anymore. This also affects artificial intelligence. For example, there is this very, very funny and interesting and stimulating possibility in DALL-E, outpainting. you feed, again, going back to the word image question, you feed the system with information about Delft in the 17th century and how the bourgeois families lived at the time, and what were the objects of the kitchen or other instruments, and you get the living room or the kitchen in which the famous girl with the earring painted by Vermeer was portrayed. You've always wondered who was here in Abbey Road when this picture was taken. And of course, we all have always seen just the fabulous four, but Dalli can tell you that something was happening and other people were crossing Abbey Road at the same time, and they had been cut off by the framing at the time because they were not the people. So again, this pressure against totality, against seeing more than what has just been framed is, I think, something which belongs to this idea. I call it, in a metaphorical way, the God's eye, just to suggest the fact that this trend to go beyond and to see more than what has been seen by a human eye. Roland Barthes famously said that the grammatical tense of photographs is the past. Because even if you take a selfie of yourself and you look immediately at it, as young as the selfie shows you, you will be no more in the future, because this is something which has to do with your past. This is why photographs are so melancholic, because they always have to do with the past. But here you see the future with the filters which allow you to simulate how you will look in 10, 20 years. There's a reverse relationship to the temporal tenses in photographs. No? And who can see the future? Of course, for God, again, for God's eye, there are no temporal ecstasies, no? Because the past, the present, and the future are all the same in unique and unitary catch of I don't know if you have ever met this face. This is a very interesting project. This person does not exist. Through generative adversarial networks, the GANs, Philip Wang has created a series of portraits. Problem is that this girl does not exist. And other faces belonging to this project represent persons who do not exist. So the phenomenological effect of this picture is photographic effect, because you take this picture and you experience this picture as if it were, in Persian terms, an index, referring to somebody who has been actually in front of the lens of the camera, be it analogic or digital, it doesn't matter, but photography, meaning writing of the light onto a photosensible support. Here, the index is left alone without the reference in the actual world. So it works like an index, but it's not an index. So this idea that you get a picture, but you don't have the original, the model outside in the world, reminds me of the creation ex nihilo, because you create a person in the image without being dependent on the real person outside. Of course, the algorithm works on hundreds and thousands of images which are there as indexes. But again, ontologically, it could be derived from actual photographs, but phenomenologically, it gives you the idea that it is somebody, but that somebody is not, does not. Again, artificial intelligence. Michael Jackson is dead. This does not prevent to resuscitate him as a hologram in concerts. It has been made for Michael Jackson. It has been made for other rappers and music pop stars like Tupac and others. So through holograms, which are a kind of augmented reality, because again, you are not teleported in another environment. You stay in your environment. You are in a concert hall, and something special pops up, integrating your ordinary perception with a digital object. And there are dancers and other singers interacting with this hologram. And of course, here we have the resurrection of the dead, the ancient idea, for example, the raising of Lazarus as narrated in the Gospel of John. So the capacity of fighting and gaining a victory against death as was, of course, one of the major operations performed by Jesus himself, not only on Lazarus, but on himself in the resurrection. Holograms. And finally, I would like to conclude with an episode of the series Black Mirror. Black Mirror is a futuristic series which speaks of a future which is not so far, which seems around the corner, which makes this series particularly unheimlich, particularly uncanny, because it actually speaks of a very close and near future. In one of the episodes, you see a very beautiful location, San Junipero, and two girls who interact in a very smart and they have fun. And after a while, you discover that they have been euthanized in the real world because they are actually old and they had severe pathologies and there was a decay of their real bodies, but their memories were transferred into a digital archive and they could keep on going, living in a simulated world, which is of course the promise of the eternal life, again as told in the Gospel of John. Which makes us think also of the importance of the digital archive and the idea that we are our memories, after all. This is why Alzheimer's is a particularly cruel disease, because it destroys our identity, our relationship. So the idea that you could stock the entire set of your memories into a machine and gain eternal life, eternity through this archival operation is something nowadays in which, as Derrida has very well said in Maldarchiv, we tend to stock anything. There is this crazy program of the UNESCO, the World Memory Program, which aims at archiving and stocking all the documents of humanity. So that goes for collective documents, and here we have not just in Netflix, Black Mirror, but Johnny Mnemonic, for example. Cinema has explored intensely this idea that you are out of yourself and you keep going just as a memory embodied in a kind of digital entity, and you are there, and your actual body decomposes on the ground. So I think that I'm done. I would like to underline once more that here I think we have to deal with the process of strong secularization of these religious issues, which are also desires. Of course, the idea of being able to gain a victory over death, to be eternal, to be superhuman, to go beyond our human limits. And I thank you very much.